Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it? It is the Brad and John Show. BJShow.co is the website, and you can go to it right now and check out the previous shows. We put them up. I try to put them up in a timely manner, although I've been not so good the last couple of days, but yesterday's show is back up, and this morning's show will be up pretty much after I get off the air this morning. BJShow.co. I'm Brad. He's John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. He runs a website. He's run it for over 22 years. He's got a list of all the political things you need on his website, johncombest.com. Now, you're going to be a guest on Scott Fawn's show. Is that today?
That's correct. Scott Fawn has a show that you can see on conventional television and on YouTube called This Week in Missouri Politics. And once a week he does what's called a midweek update. And he does it live. You can stream it on YouTube. I have a link up to Scott's YouTube page at johncombest.com today. I'll be on there along with our friend Stephanie Bell, and we'll be talking about the top stories of 2023. So tune in. It's on at 11 a.m. You can watch it live, and then afterwards you can watch it on the YouTube page. Tomorrow I'll have a link to it on my website.
And is it like a controversial show, or are you like you're not throwing chairs like the old Jerry Springer shows or anything like that?
We won't be in the studio, so there won't be any chair shots. There won't be any melees. I'm not sure if Steph's going to be there in person with Scott or not, or if she's going to dial in and video in. I'm not sure, but it'll be a rip roaring good time. Scott does an incredibly valuable service of providing voice to a lot of people. You know, in October, Brad, after the whole Israel and Hamas thing came down, on the same show, he had a pro-Palestine activist and somebody from AIPAC, the American Israel Political Action Committee. He's had Sarah Unzicker on. He's had Dean Plocker on in the height of their controversies. It's a really valuable way to hear straight from these newsmakers of what's going on.
Interesting. And Scott asks some pretty pointed questions as well, too.
He does. I mean, and the great thing is these are not – the beauty of it is that he doesn't ask these just softball questions.
Yes.
And at the same time, these folks go on and they know they'll get time to state their case. They're not going to get cut off after 15 seconds. There's no gotcha questions. It's just really good, hard-hitting questions.
Well, and once again, I consider it, what would be considered good journalism, which you don't see a lot of nowadays.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
You're exactly right. So that's today at 11 a.m. Thanks for letting me plug that, Brad.
Okay, one more time, and then I'm going to give up on this. I adjusted something here, and let me try one more time. Okay, my phone, I'm going to try one more time. I'm going to see if I can call Shelly. Let me see if this is going to work. Okay. God, this is driving me, because I really want to call McCluskey, because he's like big-time news story now.
Yeah.
Hold on a minute. Now the phone's not even going to work. Okay, here we go. This is driving me nuts. Hold on a minute. See, the problem with this is I'm trying to be a little bit cheapskate here, because if you get one of these really good phone, back in the day they were called hybrids. Today they're not necessarily that. I can't even get, it's not even working at all now. Okay, moving on from that. Okay, we were talking in the last segment about this.
There's Shelly.
Hey, I can't get it to work. I'll talk to you later, okay?
You can't hear me?
It won't even work at all. Did you answer?
I did.
Okay, it's not working at all anymore, so I've totally screwed it up, so I don't even know what's going on. Okay, I'll appreciate it.
Draw back 2 and punt.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome.
Okay, we were talking in the last segment, the situation with the police car that ended up in the inside of an LGBTQIA bar. Okay, what do you think happened?
Here's what I think happened. The first report, as I understand it, the police said that the officer thought he saw a dog and then was swerving for the dog. The second version was that he wanted to avoid a car that had been parallel parked across from the bar. Reviewing the video shows that doesn't seem to be an issue. The latest and official version is that the officer says that he was distracted by the car radio. My guess, and by the way, there's no, as I understand it, there's no dash cam in this particular vehicle, was that he was on a cell phone. Again, complete speculation. It's that we've all been driving before and committed the sin of looking at our phone and swerved a little bit. It's the only thing I could think of. But there's a whole lot of hysteria around this because state law and St. Louis police protocol does not demand that every officer go through drug or breathalyzer testing after an accident. So the fact that there was no breathalyzer or drug test, people who are inclined to believe that the cops are always liars are going to suggest that the cop was drunk and crashed into the bar. There's, of course, a lot of speculation among the progressive crowd that the officer somehow targeted a gay bar and wanted to crash his car into a gay bar. That was the initial speculation.
That's what I've heard. And I'm going like, now, hold on a minute now. Let me think about this for a minute.
But you know what, Brad? Any theory, and you know what? This goes back to the idea of, in a vacuum of information, when people don't have facts, they can just connect the dots themselves. And the idea that a police officer was drunk and mad at the LGBTQIA asterisk community and wanted to crash his car and teach him a lesson is, it's an interesting story.
Well, but the situation is he's a probationary police officer, okay? And you're starting a new job and you're trying to, get your feet wet, so to speak, and move on down the road and make that into a career, right?
Yep.
Why would you purposely, as a probationary police officer,
you wouldn't
drive your car into a gay bar? I mean, I'm going like, they're going, and the crazy part of it is, here we go again. If it were, two straight dudes that owned the bar, nothing would have been said, right?
Right.
I mean, nobody would.
And I think, and so what, one source that folks can check out for information on this is St. Louis attorney and Democrat Jane Duker, who you can find on Twitter,
right,
or X now. Jane has posted a lot of facts. She represents the St. Louis Police Officers Union. But so she's posted a lot of facts and questions about this case, and namely the fact that there is body cam footage of the incident between it ended up, I believe there were 4 officers. So there were 2 officers that originally were in the accident, and then there were 2 more responding officers that came. So there's body cam footage, but the police department the city police department is not releasing that footage to the public, but they have shown it to members of the St. Louis Board of Aldermen and members of the St. Louis City LGBTQIA asterisk special committee. So they're select folks that have seen the body cam footage, but they're not making it public. So to me, that seems a little screwy. And you just don't know what to believe in this.
Well, the whole thing is, and it's even gotten some national attention, which, once again, here we go. The kind of national attention that St. Louis doesn't need. You know what I mean? It's just one of those kind of stories that it's like, okay, here we go again. If we don't have enough problems, we not have a situation where apparently, according to the narrative that some people are, that these cops, these 2 straight young probationary cops, didn't like this bar, so they're just going to smash their police car right through the front plate.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. And it goes to show in the never-ending cycle of perpetuity, which is you have high crime in St. Louis. Could you imagine, Brad, being a young man and being 18 years old and thinking, you know what I want to do? I want to be down there for a riot when somebody's spitting in my face and taunting me, and I want to have people throw things at me. That seems like a good solid career to provide for my family.
That's the problem. Nobody wants to be a police officer anymore.
Yeah.
You hear these stories about all around the country that like they have, the cities and counties that have their police academies, where not the movie, but a real police academy, where typically they'd have a class of like 50 or something like that, and now they're graduating 6, things like that.
Who in there, right? And so now here's my theory on it, Brad. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think you're going to see, and I think on the grassroots level, you've already seen this. You are going to have, because it's kind of like the military we talked about yesterday, police are going to have to lower their standards. So no longer will you have to be physically fit, but maybe you're just really good at social, emotional, de-escalation of conflicts. You're going to lower the standards to become a police officer. You're going to aggressively pursue folks from the minority community and the historically disadvantaged community. You're going to get a lot of people as cops that were considered 10 years ago not qualified to be a cop. And all of a sudden, you're going to see a little bit of conservative / right wing backlash against local police that we haven't seen as often. And what happens when the quality of police officer deteriorates?
Well, the interesting part of this is they've already changed the standards a lot. And what's interesting about this is for decades and decades and decades, if you were a police officer, you had to have a clean-shaven face. You see police officers all the time now with beards.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing was, I know the department I worked at in Illinois, one of the officers there was applying for a job for the Illinois State Police, and he got black flagged, whatever you want to call it, very quickly because of the fact that what they made you do is you had to take your shirt off and you had to show them your arms.
And for your tattoos, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And he was a Marine, and he had a couple tattoos on his forearm, between his elbow and his wrist, and bang, gone. That was it.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that if you had any tattoos, if they wore their summer uniform, which was essentially short sleeve shirts, if they wore their summer uniform, any tattoo that would be visible with the short sleeve shirts on, you're gone. They were out.
Yeah.
You couldn't be Illinois State Police. That's changed because I've seen, not necessarily state police, but I've seen quite a few police officers with tattoos and things like that. So, it guess everything changes. People.
But back to the bar story real quick. Eventually, some of this footage is going to come out, and we're going to see who the aggressor in the confrontation actually is, and whether or not someone claims that the bar owner's partner had a black eye the next day. And so, if any of this stuff is true, now the police, as I understand it, arrested the guy for assaulting one of the police officers. So we'll see how much of this is actually true and how much of it is just, in a lull of a lack of holiday news, it's fun on social media to just go out there and start a controversy, I guess.
Well, but you know what? This year it's interesting. There's, at least on the national front, there really hasn't been a lull of news because there's been all sorts of crazy stuff going on. The Israeli conflict's still going on. The Hunter Biden thing is still, not simmering, but to maybe a low boil. All the crazy stuff going on with that.
Yeah, but in St. Louis City, what else are you going to talk about? Brad, why would you talk about the latest homicide when you can make up a story about police officers targeting a gay bar?
I guess. Whatever. I guess the situation is, here's the situation for me, is that if a police car came flying through the front of my business, I wouldn't be mad at the police officer. I would be concerned that the police officer maybe had a heart attack or something like that. You know what I mean?
First of all, Brad, you haven't attended nearly enough Cory Bush rallies.
I guess
or else your disposition would be different. Now, me personally, if that happened to me, I would want to make sure the officers were okay.
Right,
Then
exactly.
I would think, how much money can I possibly get in insurance for having this happen? And I would want to talk to the PR team from the police department in the city. I would want to think if there's a little bit of way to, maybe I could run a campaign about safe driving for the right price. There's got to be an angle to it. On my website today, by the way, Brad, there's an article from our friend Tony Bateo at Tony's Kansas City. Kansas City has just matched their all-time homicide rate.
Really?
So if you think that St. Louis City is the only part of Missouri that's dealing with urban crime, check out johncombest.com today and our friend Tony Bateo's website for a KC crime update.
Can I tell you something? It's interesting you bring this up because I just talked to somebody the other day who originally lived in Springfield for a long time, moved out probably about a year or so ago, and they said that per capita, Springfield has more homicides than the city of St. Louis. And I'm going like, I've never heard that. Have you heard that?
I haven't heard that. But, I read a lot of newspapers, say, down in the Boot Heel area and then, or even in the Cape area. And you see, there are bad neighborhoods in that part of the state. And, when you look at it per capita, if you have a really bad neighborhood, depending on what the municipality is per capita, sure, the homicide level could be higher.
I guess. Okay. Your friend and mine, Camellia,
yes,
who bought our first advertising package on the Brad and John show, called me a what?
Minarchist.
Now,
for folks who don't know, Camellia left a comment on our Instagram page, which you can find at BJ Show Afterglow on Instagram, and she left a comment because Camille listens to the audio version of our show, and I have the definition here via our favorite source, Wikipedia, Brad, if you want to hear it.
Okay, go ahead.
The definition is The true definition is called a night watchman state, and it's part of libertarian philosophy. And it says those who are minarchists believe in minarchism, which is the view that the government's only function is to protect the rights of its citizens. So that's what you were talking about yesterday on the last few days, especially Brad, when you were talking about your thoughts on drug swap meets and the other things the government should not be involved in.
Well, that's part of the law of unintended consequences. With you, we and I talked about the fact that there's this apparently now a gaping loophole in the law, or the new state constitution amendment, that granted us the recreational marijuana. That, what was that, down in House Springs? Where was that?
Yeah, it was House Springs. Yep.
And apparently they're selling marijuana at flea markets.
But there's a sign that says no THC,
right?
Brad.
Which is like going to QT and saying there's a sign that says no gasoline, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
It's like,
but here's the pump.
Just
we have
donuts.
16 pumps for you.
Yeah, just donuts. Those pumps. Oh yeah. Well, maybe you might be able to squeeze that if you put the credit card in, and maybe something might come out of that hose. But there's no gasoline here. What are you talking about?
So have you ever been called a minarchist before?
No, But see, once again, I went with the O'Fallon Chamber of Commerce. I can't remember if it was early this year. I went to one of these things they called Lunch and Legislators. And it's sort of a neat thing. You have lunch and you sit down, and typically it is a legislator. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just some kind of government official, maybe not an elected person. But it was Richard West. And
Yep.
Richard West,
former police officer, now state representative.
right, used to be the mayor of New Melly. And Richard West gave some financial statistics, and I was blown away about the fact that, and you probably know this number, that in the last 6 or 7 years, the state budget has doubled. Do you know this?
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, but that would include, Brad, payments from the federal government, Biden bucks and anything we have coming in.
But think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be like if you were, like, let's say, working at a job and you were making $50,000 a year, and then within 5 years you were making $100,000 a year. That would be great. To me, when you hear the state budget has doubled, I'm going like, okay, that means more bureaucracy. That means more government workers. That means more people in offices in Jefferson City, and which I'm not wild about, to be honest with you. Maybe that's the minarchist in me, right?
Yeah, it probably is. And what we've seen with these pandemic payments is that you got to be real careful once you start funding. What was it? I think Reagan was the one that said nothing is more permanent than a temporary government program.
Well, but see, that's the problem. And you see this all over the country. Like, for example, there's examples of this, and we don't have this in the St. Louis area, but there's examples around the country where they put in a tollway. And when they come out, they put it on the ballot, whatever. Hey, we're going to put this tollway in, and we figure that there's going to be enough tolls in 7 years where we'll have enough money where it won't be a tollway anymore. And then 20 years later, it's still a tollway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course it is.
It's like, and then they go, well, we didn't figure on the maintenance, and we didn't figure on the fact that that the paint to put on the center lines got more expensive. And,
right, of course. There's always an extenuating circumstance.
Right, and it's like, okay, I was born at night, but not last night. Don't give me that crap. Okay, and we have to take a break. Our last break is 7:41.